Once those guidelines are developed, the NRP steering committee takes the guidelines and brings them to life so that you get to move from science to guidelines to education. The textbook is developed to reflect the guidelines and the science. And so at the bedside, as clinicians, you are truly having the opportunity to bring the latest science through the guidelines and your education to your students and clinicians. The NRP Steering Committee is a multidisciplinary group of experts that helps develop all of these educational products for you. The NRP Steering Committee includes both neonatologists, there's a nurse educator representative, community pediatrician representatives, there's an early career member, and in addition, the NRP Steering Committee benefits from liaisons on the committee that represent the American Association for Respiratory Care, the American College of Nurse Midwives, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the National Association of Neonatal Nurses. The NRP Steering Committee develops all of the educational materials that you'll see in front of you as part of the 9th edition, including the textbook, online courses, additional courses, and ancillary materials like the wall charts, code charts, and pocket cards. Today, I have the great opportunity of being joined by Dr. Henry Lee and Christine Cooper. And as I said, I'm Gary Weiner. I'm the editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation and vice chair of the ILCOR Neonatal Task Force. I also had the great opportunity to be involved with the American Heart Association and American Academy of Pediatrics Guidelines Writing Committee. I'm a neonatologist at the University of Michigan. My partner, Dr. Henry Lee, is associate editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation, and he was co-chair of the American Heart Association AAP Neonatal Writing Group. Henry is a professor of pediatrics at University of California, San Diego, and neonatologist in the NICU. Christine Cooper is also an associate editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation. And Christine, many of you from the West Coast probably know her. Christine has had the great opportunity to take over in the role of our associate editor and nursing liaison from Jeanette Zeichkin. And Christine has been a nurse practitioner for, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I've lost how many years, but Christine has a tremendous amount of experience as a nurse practitioner and an instructor. And Christine leads our instructor development task force. So let's get started with some of the science changes that have been incorporated into the 9th edition of the NRP. We'll start off. And guys, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn on my camera. I've been looking at a blank screen. Anyhow, let's start off by talking about the algorithm. There's really very few changes to the algorithm with the 9th edition. We've really made a concerted effort this edition to ensure there's alignment between the NRP algorithm and the 2025 American Heart and AAP guidelines algorithm. Other than some differences in colors and shape of boxes, the two algorithms this time are in complete alignment. You'll notice there are two new boxes that were added at the top of the algorithm. Birth is now within an action box instead of just alongside an arrow. And there's a box indicating the initiation of the cord management plan that's been added. And this helps to emphasize the importance of developing a cord management plan and getting that plan implemented even before you start your actual resuscitation. Routine suction continues to be de-emphasized. The routine initial steps now include warm, maintain normal temperature, dry, and position. Drying provides sufficient stimulation for most babies that are not vigorous. You can provide additional stimulation and clear the airway if needed. There are changes to the oxygen saturation target table. What you'll notice is the target oxygen saturation table now starts at 2 minutes after birth. And this just reflects the practical reality that teams are unlikely to be able to obtain an oxygen saturation at 1 minute after birth. You may also notice some terminology changes within the textbook to align with other American Heart guidelines and to add more inclusive language for all NRP providers. Most notably is the transition from the abbreviation PPV, which stood for positive pressure ventilation, to either the term assisted ventilation or simply ventilation. The ninth edition continues to emphasize the importance of deferred cord clamping for most newborn infants. The guideline has been updated to recommend deferred cord clamping for at least 60 seconds for term and preterm infants who don't require immediate resuscitation. This is in contrast to the 8th edition that recommended 30 to 60 seconds of delay. New to the 9th edition is a suggestion that intact umbilical cord milking, where the intact cord is milked from the placenta toward the infant, may be a reasonable alternative to early cord clamping for newborn infants between 35 and 42 weeks gestation who remain non-vigorous despite stimulation. For non-vigorous preterm infants between 28 and 34 weeks, there's not yet enough evidence to recommend routinely milking the intact umbilical cord. Importantly, umbilical cord milking is not recommended for preterm infants less than 28 weeks gestation because it's been associated with an increased risk of severe intraventricular hemorrhage. Based on evolving evidence that very preterm infants less than 32 weeks gestation may benefit from receiving a higher initial oxygen concentration, the initial oxygen concentration for preterm infants has been further divided into levels for infants between 32 and 34 weeks gestation and those less than 32 weeks gestation. So, for infants between 32 and 34 weeks gestation, we continue to recommend beginning assisted ventilation with 21 to 30% oxygen and titrate the oxygen concentration to meet the minute-specific oxygen saturation targets based on pulse oximetry. For infants less than 32 weeks gestation, the new recommendation is to begin with at least 30% oxygen. We do not know the ideal initial oxygen concentration for this group of infants. It does, however, seem important to achieve an oxygen saturation of 80 to 85% by 5 minutes after birth. As long as pulse oximetry is used to guide oxygen therapy, it may be reasonable to initiate ventilation for preterm infants across a wide range of oxygen concentrations. Additional studies are currently underway that may inform future recommendations. Henry?
Thanks, Gary. As has been the case for prior editions of NRP, we still emphasize that ventilation really is the priority for newborns who receive resuscitation. And in that vein, we have some updates on the guidance for providing ventilation. And this is the first thing to note is that the ventilation rate, which in the 8th edition had been noted to be recommended at 40 to 60 breaths per minute, is now updated to 30 to 60 breaths per minute. So the higher bound of that range is still the same at 60, but the lower bound has been reduced to 30. And this reflects some research which noted that perhaps in that lower range, sometimes in specific situations that may provide the tidal volume that may be optimal for newborns who require resuscitation. So the ventilation rate is 30 to 60 breaths per minute. I will note also when we provide chest compressions to babies requiring that we had already been in some ways recommending a ventilation rate of 30 with that 3-to-1 ratio and the 120 events per minute. And so this recommendation of 30 to 60 breaths per minute also kind of aligns with that situation when you're providing chest compressions. Also, when providing ventilation, there is an update on the range of the initial peak inflation pressure, or PIP. In the 8th edition, the guidance was to start with a PIP of 20 to 25 centimeters of water. And the 9th edition, based on the guidelines, which have been updated to note that a range of 20 to 30 centimeters of water for the initial PIP is being potentially the appropriate range, that we are now suggesting that the initial PIP for both preterm and term infants be 25 centimeters of water. You'll note there that for infants 32 weeks and more, that there's an acceptable range of the initial PIP for 25 to 30 centimeters of water, and for less than 32 weeks, lower at 20 to 25 centimeters of water. But for practical purposes and for ease of implementation and teaching, we are suggesting an initial PIP of 25 centimeters of water for neonatal resuscitation. Note that this is the initial PIP, and there may be reasons as you're resuscitating an infant to go up or down based on the effectiveness of the ventilation that you're providing. So this is the initial PIP suggestion of 25 centimeters of water. And continuing on with ventilation, the ventilation corrective steps, which you are familiar with if you have been using NRP, sometimes noted as Mr. SOPA, remains as part of our algorithm and guidance. But there's some slight changes. 8th edition, we noted that if the heart rate is not increasing within the first 15 seconds and you do not observe chest movement with ventilation, start the ventilation corrective steps. And the update in the 9th edition, noting that sometimes it can take maybe perhaps a little bit longer than that as you provide ventilation, is if the heart rate is not increasing within 15 to 30 seconds of starting ventilation and you do not observe chest movement, to start the ventilation corrective steps, which again is what we have used Mr. SOPA as the guidance for that. And the other change or update is that in the 8th edition, there was guidance to perform the corrective steps sequentially. And there was a table in the textbook where MR was first, and then SO, then T, then A. And here we are still recommending those various corrective steps, but not necessarily having to follow that order very specifically. And you may follow that order depending on the clinical scenario, but there's also the potential that based on your assessment of the infant and clinical situation, that you may choose the steps that are most likely to be helpful and prioritize the order in which you perform them. And just as an example, perhaps you may have sectioned the mouth and nose earlier on and found that there was not an obstruction in the airway and started ventilation, and at a certain point have achieved what you perceive to be a good seal with the mask. And at that point, perhaps as you're performing ventilation corrective steps, it may not be the most optimal step to then perform suction again. And so then in that case, you may choose the steps that are most likely to be helpful and not necessarily do it in that exact order as had been in the textbook and guidance before. Some other updates that you will find in the textbook, and this will also be noted in the materials that are provided by AAP and RP, such as wall charts and pocket cards that can help you when you do have to progress along the path to an alternative airway, and specifically an endotracheal tube and intubation. That based on literature, there are some updates, refinements in terms of the endotracheal tube size guidance for various populations and gestational age and birth weight estimate groups. And so you can see there the update for the 9th edition. The other thing I'll note is that for the extremely preterm, smallest babies we care for, that there's a little asterisk in the table, noting that for those babies, 2.0 millimeter internal diameter endotracheal tube, it could be optional and maybe considered if that is available in your unit. Similarly, for the cases where you do need to intubate the baby, in the textbook, there's guidance similar to 8th edition for the nasal tracheal length being one way to estimate. And then the second method is to use a table as a reference. And so it's not shown here, but there's an updated table that is also updated in terms of the clarification for where the estimated insertion depth should be measured. And so 8th edition, the estimate was the insertion depth to the adjacent to the baby's lip. And 9th edition has been updated to note that the endotracheal tube marking is the corresponding to the estimated insertion depth adjacent to the anterior edge of the baby's upper or maxillary gum in the midline. So hopefully that can be helpful as you estimate the insertion depth of the tube when you have to intubate the baby. So I will note, in this webinar, we are going over a lot of highlights and perhaps particularly the significant updates and changes, but certainly encourage you, of course, to actually read the whole textbook, as there's a lot of other sort of perhaps refinements and hopefully, I think, improvements that the steering committee has helped us to make. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who will provide updates on the NRP program.
Well, I think many of you might be already asking the question, is there a change table that I can find that would summarize all these great recommendations? And indeed there is. So you can find the NRP change table for the 9th edition on the AAP NRP homepage. We have links provided there to get you to the change table. It is in PDF form, so you can easily print it out. It's actually a colorful and nicely concise table that will let you bring these changes to your workplace. And if you happen to be an instructor, you can find these on your ITK or on the instructor toolkit, which is under the home tab of your instructor toolkit. Okay, now the AAP AHA NRP program is currently available in 24 countries around the world. I don't know if you knew that, but we're all over the world. The NRP launch for the 9th edition is right now being done only in the United States and the Middle East. The translation and international launches are coming in early 2026. So the NRP 9th edition will be translated into French Canadian, Spanish, Italian, and simplified Chinese. So more things are coming. This is just the first of many launches. Now I get to talk about some programmatic updates. This is maybe one of the most exciting things I get to tell you the most exciting things. There are many programmatic updates to tell you about. There are, first of all, updated photos and illustrations throughout the textbook and courses. You can still access the videos via a QR code, and we've made it very easy to find them both on the AAP website if you're not an instructor, and under a specific tab if you are an instructor. And the new videos include things like umbilical cord clamping, cord milking, the photos demonstrating additional things like abdominal paracentesis and pericardiocentesis. Be watching for a lot of updated videos. They are something that you can look forward to. Through an extensive partnership network, we've also coordinated to have the simultaneous release of all of your NRP 9th edition resources. So your photos, your videos, they've all been updated. All ancillary materials such as the NRP wall chart, the code card chart, and a new pocket card have been developed. They will be available for you in November, as well as updated clinical activities and assessments if you happen to be in an institution that uses RQI for NRP. This is maybe one of the most exciting things, so take note of this. A great new feature of the NRP 9th edition is the availability of an ebook with each provider license. So when you get to renew your NRP credentialing, you will have automatic access to the new 9th edition materials. This will make it easy for you to always be able to reference it. Just imagine no more looking for a book to rent or check out or borrow somebody's book. You now have your own NRP 9th edition. Now, science and service course. We really haven't mentioned this, but this whole change table, all of the changes for NRP 9th edition, the new recommendations and guidelines have been summarized in a video summary that includes videos and narration. And if you are a audio or a visual learner, you have but to click on it and watch it for an easy summary of all of the 9th edition changes. It's optional. It is free to you. It's available to all NRP providers and instructors as a complimentary resource to review the science changes in the 9th edition, kind of like a visual podcast. The video summary of NRP 9th edition's science and practice changes include deferred cord clamping, umbilical cord milking, oxygen management for assisted ventilation, initial ventilation settings, using an LMA as a primary device, updated targets, oxygen saturation table, the ET tube sizing for smaller infants, and the new point of reference as the upper middle gum. So you just get to sit back and watch a presentation of all the main updates in the NRP 9th edition. One other highly anticipated thing in our NRP textbook, we've done chapter expansion to additional neonatal populations. Highly anticipated chapter 15 is resuscitation and stabilization of newborn infants with congenital heart disease. I'll talk about the online courses that are available also after this, but also in the book. Chapter 16 is a new chapter, and it features resuscitation in the neonatal intensive care unit. As part of our commitment to expanding the reach of neonatal resuscitation education, we're introducing several new courses in 2025 also that extend NRP beyond the delivery room as well as for special circumstances in the delivery room. These specialized courses are designed to deepen your expertise and equip you to handle the most critical situations in a variety of environments. The new chapters are available in the textbook, and they are meant to be kind of a little appetizer for you to sharpen your excitement to learn more. And then the online modules are for more in-depth learning. The cardiac module is only online, and both the NRP NICU module and we have a NEP module, which is neonatal education for pre-hospital providers, and that is also going to be only available. I think that's going to be available as a blended course with online and in-person activities. A little more about the modules now. So NRP Cardiac. This new online course is designed specifically for NRP advanced providers and instructors, and it's focused on equipping healthcare providers with the knowledge to care for newborns with congenital cardiac anomalies at the time of delivery. It was released just in July of 2025. It is a partner to Chapter 15, which is resuscitation and stabilization of newborn infants with congenital heart disease. I want to note the NRP cardiac modules, in other words, the online course, is going to be available to you for purchase for a very nominal amount, and it will be available online for you on your NRP learning platform for future and just-in-time reference and training. Resuscitation in the NICU is a new hybrid learning course that provides a deep dive into managing critical care situations in the NICU environment and includes respiratory and cardiovascular compromise, cardiopulmonary arrest, post-arrest care. Participants will also gain strategies to enhance team performance, ensuring improved coordination and communication during high-stake events. This is going to be coming, we just got word, November of 2025. So next month, you should be looking to see resuscitation in the NICU become available. And the last module, or the last course that is soon to be coming out is Neonatal Education for Pre-Hospital Professionals. This e-learning course was created for pre-hospital professionals to build on their knowledge and confidence in assessing and managing neonatal emergencies in the field, and will complement the AAP existing program, which is Pediatric Education for Pre-Hospital Professionals, or PEP. So the NEP program is coming in early 2026, and this will add on to Chapter 13, which is deliveries beyond the delivery room. What is the implementation timeframe? So instructors and providers are encouraged to complete the complementary science and service course as soon as possible and review all the science updates. NRP instructors will be required to update their courses to include the 9th edition content by June 1st, 2026. June 1st, 2026. This is also the date when institutions are encouraged to transition their clinical practices to the 9th edition recommendations. So we encourage you to work with your institution to develop and implement a plan for a smooth transition from the NRP 8th edition to the NRP 9th edition. For those of you who are instructors, updated instructor courses, or the updated instructor course, including adaptive learning, it has been updated, and it is it is available to you now. And there is an updated instructor toolkit as well. So if you are an instructor and want to know more about the offerings that are new and developed specifically for you, join the instructor webinar tomorrow. It's going to be October 30th at 12 p.m. Central Time. And there's a QR code. You can scan it and you can still register. There's still time. And the instructor bundle, if you want to become an instructor, so instructor candidates, the instructor bundle includes now the NRP Essentials Adaptive Learning course, the NRP Advanced Online Adaptive Learning course, and the newly made NRP Instructor course. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today and for your engagement through this whole session. We hope the updates we shared about the NRP 9th edition provide clarity and valuable insights to support your ongoing work and your initiatives. Remember, these updates originate from a combination of rigorous evidence-based review, validated research. It's not tradition, it's not opinion, it's science. Your feedback and questions are always welcome as we move forward together. We appreciate your dedication and commitment. Should you need any further information or assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you once again for your time and attention. Have a wonderful day.